Now let's take a look at installing SQL Server. Now this is not going to be the most fascinating, enthralling video you've ever seen. As a matter of fact, I would suggest that next year during the holidays, when the family's kind of been hanging around a little too long, get this video out and play it, and that should clean out the in-laws pretty quick. But what I want to show you here is we're going to step through this process, and for those of you who've done this before, you may not want to watch these videos, but I want to show you kind of what you can expect and what you're going to see, and talk about a few odds and ends that may pop up along the way. So you'll notice here that I have placed the SQL Server installation CD or DVD into the drive, and I will just simply double click on it here, and it is now going to tell me that SQL Server requires the .NET Framework and an updated Windows installer to be installed. And so it's now going to go through this process of putting on all the prerequisites that it needs, that it has, or it might direct me out to the website to get those. Just as some background information for you, I'm going to install the 32-bit version of SQL Server 2008 Enterprise onto a Windows Server 2008 box running in a virtual environment. Okay, so I'll click OK here, and you'll notice it begins to extract the files that it needs, and it will start to go through the process of adding the .NET Framework. Now, one of the things that you're going to see is that SQL Server is relatively quick and easy to set up. There's a mystique out there about SQL Server that a lot of people have, that it's this wildly complex environment that takes a ton of training to work in, and it's just not so. You'll find it to be very logical and very friendly. And as you can see here, setup's loading the components. They're saying that may take a minute or two. What I'm going to do to make this video even less unbearable for you as we go through here in a couple of places is to pause the video and come back when something significant has changed or happened. And I think it's probably a good time for that right now. So as you can see, we completed extracting our files. So now we're to the Welcome to the Setup menu. And what we're going to do now is start to read through the license terms, and I'll go through all this for you. There you go. I'm sure you read all that. And we're going to accept all of that. And now we'll choose to install. And so what's going to happen is, notice it thinks it's connected to the internet. It had all the files right there on the CD, and so now the installation will begin. And so I'll let the installation continue. Once again, I'll pause the video. So what you're seeing here is not total real time, but you're seeing everything as it changes. But I'll pause here, and when something else significant pops up or happens, I'll join you again and we'll talk about it. Now, as we work through this installation, I just wanted to point out to you that what we're doing is we're now installing the .NET 3.5 Service Pack 1. And so this is a prerequisite that SQL Server 2008 needs to see on the server, and so it is installing that for me. And again, if it didn't see some things that it needed, if it didn't have the correct files on the CD or the DVD, it would have gone to the internet and gotten those, and so that's why you're seeing download complete. You can now disconnect from the internet. Now, as you can see, the .NET Framework has successfully installed, and I will choose Exit there. And what I will do now is go back and kick off my setup one more time. And notice it's informing me that I need to wait while SQL Server 2008 processes the current operation. It will now move past that previous prerequisite, which was the .NET Framework, and go forward from there. And so now we reach the SQL Server Installation Center, and this is where we're going to get all kinds of opportunities to get any kind of backup information that we need as far as support information. Notice we can view the hardware and software requirements right here. I'll just click on that, and it's going to attempt to take me out to the internet and take me to that location, and I'm not going to mess with internet security situations. I will just close Internet Explorer. And here you see, there are the hardware requirements for installing, so I won't drag you through all that. Security documentation is here, online release, system configuration checker. We'll talk about some of this other stuff a little bit later on. And so this is what I'm going to use for planning. And when I'm ready to install, I will click on Installation. And notice here are my choices. Do I want to do a SQL Server standalone installation or add new features? Keep in mind, that's something to remember. Whenever you need to add more features, you're going to run this same setup program and come back to right here. I'll do a SQL failover cluster installation. I can add a node to a cluster. I can upgrade from a prior version of SQL Server. Talk a little bit more about that later in a different video. And I can look for product updates. Well, I want to do a standalone installation, and so I'll choose that. and the setup program will jump into that mode and begin to process that choice. Now, from here on out, I will stay in this installation center, and it will continue to step me through the process, ask me questions, point me to resources, and so forth. And so now you see we're going to get the SQL Server 2000 setup window, and there's going to be some setup support rules that are going to identify problems that might occur. And notice this, let me show you some details. It did some checks to make sure that I'm running the minimum operating system version, setup administrator, restart computer, the WMI service passed. It just did some checks to make sure that I'm not going to have any bizarre problems as we go through here. And we're ready to continue on. What I'm going to do is stop the video here and join back up with you in installing SQL Server 2008 Part 2.